Hi, I'm Robert. I come to you as an automobile enthusiast that has maintained, serviced, and repaired my own vehicles in excess of 30 years. I currently drive a car with over 230,000 miles on it, and I once had a car that had over 400,000 miles on it and ran very well. While you're watching the video, please watch a step or two ahead. Sometimes the current step is better explained in the next step or two. Also, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you benefit from the information. This happened to me the last time that I did the water pump on the 960. The bolts that came with the water pump were a lot shorter than the bolts that I pulled out. So I'm gonna put the old bolts back in. Okay, it looked like the new bolts would have enough threads in there to hold that water pump in tight. So I went on ahead and used the new bolts. I finger tightened them down with a screwdriver. Then I snugged them down with the small 10mm 1/4 inch ratchet. Now I'm going to torque them down. And when I snugged them down, I went opposite. I snugged it down, this one down, then this one, then this one, then the bottom one. You kind of go cross it to snug it down, and that's how I'm going to torque it. I'm going to go one, then I'm going to go the opposite side, and I'm going to crisscross on it. Okay, I got the water pump in. I went around twice on torquing it because I've had one time that leaked on me. I had to retighten the bolts. So make sure you go around twice when you're torquing this thing water pump down. Now I'm going to install the tensioner roller and I'm going to torque it down. I think it gets torqued down to around 30 foot-pounds, but I'll put the torque specifications on the notes under the video. Next thing I do is clean the bottom of the timing belt cover out. That way if it leaks something else, you can see it, whether it be oil or coolant down there. Next I install the idler roller and torque that. Okay, I got the hydraulic tensioner tightened all the way down and pinned. So now I'm going to remove the clamp and see if I see any evidence of leaking on the piston. Okay, when I look down there into the hydraulic tensioner, I just barely got any moisture at all in there, so it's pretty much dry. You can decide if you're going to use it or not. I'm going to go ahead and reuse this one because I've seen them where they leaked a lot, and this one just barely leaked at all. So when you put these in, you also put these plastic sleeves on them, and that's like a backup in case the tensioner fails. So I'll have that as a backup. Those two bolts in place on that hydraulic tensioner. You might have to hold this tensioner roller up to get that hydraulic tensioner in place and get those bolts snugged down. Okay, I got all the components in place and torqued down: the water pump, the hydraulic tensioner, the tensioner roller, and the idler roller. So I went on ahead and set the timing belt cover on to make sure those timing marks still appear to be aligned and they haven't moved, which they are pretty much aligned where they were before. So I'm going to check the crank mark and I'm going to put the belt on. Okay, I took a picture of my crank mark and zoomed it in with my phone to make sure that was truly my crank mark, which it was. It's where it was when I started, so nothing has moved. I'm going to go ahead and put the timing belt on. I'm going to start at the bottom. Okay, I dropped the timing belt down over there. I'm going to go under and reach for it. Now what you do is you put the timing belt on the bottom of the crank. You slide the belt past that dampener. Normally I face the teeth toward the harmonic balancer and slide it up behind that that dampener and onto the teeth of the crank. Then I come up and I run the belt over this idler. Then I put it on the intake cam and I hold the intake cam as best I can and make sure there's no slack from the crank over this idler pulley over the intake cam. Then I put it over the exhaust cam, and then I keep as much slack out of that process as possible, run it over this water pump, and then run it over the tensioner pulley is the last thing. And I want all the slack there at the tensioner pulley and between the tensioner pulley and the crank. So there's no slack coming over this way, and all the slack is at the tensioner pulley, because when you pull that tensioner pin, you want it to take the slack out there. So let's go under and start the process. Okay, remember you got your dampener there and your crank is there. So I'm going to take the belt and face it, the teeth, toward the back of this pulley, and then try to loop the teeth of the belt onto that crank and the smooth part of the belt onto that dampener. Okay, this belt is going on very easy. I put the front of the belt up on the dampener with the teeth facing the harmonic balancer. Then I worked this passenger side of the belt under the timing belt cover. And as I worked it under the timing belt cover, the rest of the belt just fell behind the dampener. Now I'm going to just push it on behind the dampener, and as you can see, the belt just slid right on. So the belt is on the crank pulley. Now I can go up top and work the rest of it around up top. Well, I don't know if I have ever had a belt go on this easy, but I did bring the belt up around this pulley a little bit so it could fit around the crank tight. I pulled the slack out, went up around the intake cam. The belt just fell in place. Then I went across, put it on the exhaust cam, and there's a little, very little slack in it. I don't think I could really get another teeth pulled in there. So I went down around to the water pump and fitted over that water pump and this tensioner pulley at the same time. So the belt's in place. I'm gonna go ahead and pull a pin on that tensioner to take the slack out of the belt. Then I'm gonna double check the cam alignment right before that. So let me put this belt cover on there. If these cams are still aligned where they need to be, I'm gonna pull that pin on that tensioner and take the slack out of the belt. Those marks are still aligned, so I'm gonna grab pliers and pull that pin out of that hydraulic tensioner. Okay, the pin is pulled. I still got my mark on my exhaust cam. I still got my mark on my intake cam. I'm gonna go down here and look for the mark on my crank. That mark still is right on the crank. And maybe that other belt was stretched a little bit, but these marks seems dead on now. And I got the pin out of that hydraulic tensioner. Man, it looks like that hydraulic tensioner may have leaked some. I might pull that thing back out. I'm going to look at it a little closer, take a picture of it. That hydraulic tensioner was leaking, so I went on ahead and swapped it out with another one that I had on hand. And it's always good to have all parts on deck in case you have to change something out that you didn't expect to. And now, since the belt was already in place, it didn't lose any timing. So now I'm going to go ahead and clip the new retainer spacer I have on hand. Okay, you take these spacers and you put them in place and you push them until they click over that pin. So let me get that in place and go ahead and snap that in. Okay, that's how that spacer looks when it is properly snapped in place. And it is able to spin around, but it is snapped in place. So if that hydraulic tensioner fails, the theory is for that spacer to keep the tensioner from falling back far enough to cause it to skip teeth. Maybe it'll skip one tooth every once in a while and cause you to lose timing and come check it. Okay, now that I have everything in place, the next thing you want to do is crank the car over by hand or with a tool on the harmonic balancer, and you want to turn this cam sprocket one full revolution. I normally do it too, just to be safe. And if you get at any point where it stops the motor from turning, the timing is off and it needs to be realigned before you can safely start the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this top timing belt cover, check the timing one more time, and turn it over by hand 2 full revolutions on the crank sprocket, on the cam sprocket. Okay, I turned the sprockets over 2 full revolutions, and as you can see, the exhaust sprocket is dead on. The intake sprocket is about 1/4 of a tooth off. It's possible that that wasn't marked right when they were marked initially, so you could put some whiteout on that, and then my crank is dead on. So I didn't feel any bad resistance, so I can go ahead and start this motor and look at the timing belt turn. But it doesn't have any coolant in it, so I won't do that. It's probably not the end of the world to start a car for a second or two with no coolant in it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and finish buttoning it up and put coolant in it, then start it. Next thing I'm going to do is put that dampener cover back on with those 2 10mm bolts. Next, I make sure that hose is tightened back up with that 7mm. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and put that cover back over the motor. I'm not going to wipe that out because I got an oil leak I got to deal with and a flame trap I need to clean. So I'm just going to put it on there and be back next day or two. When you put those screws in on top of that cover, just snug them down. They don't have to be tight. They're not going nowhere, and neither is that cover. Okay, I put the fan shroud back in place. I had a couple of spare screws in my scrounge, so I went on ahead and put all 3 screws in the top of it. Now I'm going to drop the fan in place and route the wire where it's supposed to be. Okay, I took the fan wire, ran it back under that bracket right there. Now I'm going to hook that ground wire back up and plug the fan into the relay and clip the relay back on that bracket. Okay, I got the battery tied down with the battery tied down there. The best thing I could use to get that thing loose and tie it back down was the blade out of the screwdriver that comes in the Volvo kit. I use that to put it through there and work that thing in and out. Now I'm going to go ahead and hook up the battery positive and the battery negative with the 10mm. Secure it. Next thing I'm doing is adding coolant to the system. If you think the system is empty, the best way I could figure out how to add coolant to it was to remove this top radiator hose and fill fluid down there until it filled up in the bottle and vice versa. So I think that's the best way to fill it up right the first time. Other than that, you can fill up this coolant reservoir and start the car and check it, you know, after you run the car, see if it sucked it out of there, and it might take you 3 or 4 days to fill it up. But you should only fill this bottle up when the motor is cold, and other than that, the weird expansion stuff happens and doesn't let you fill it up properly. So disconnect that hose, top radiator hose on the other side, and fill it up that way, or just keep filling it up in this bottle. Take your pick. Okay, I kept pouring it in there with the hose at the thermostat housing disconnected, and then I poured some in the hose at the thermostat housing, and then I actually got just about another gallon of coolant in with that method. So I'm between the minimum and the max mark. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more up to the max mark, and I probably won't. Okay, now that I got coolant in the system and all of the timing component stuff in place, I'm going to go ahead and crank the car and watch it run, make sure that water pump doesn't leak, because I got the timing belt cover really dry down there. And after I check that out, then I'll go ahead and put the serpentine belt information stuff on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit the starter. It wouldn't be a bad idea to say a prayer if you're a praying person or not, because if you mess something up, Only a prayer will get you out of it. So here it is. I'm going to turn the key and we'll see how it fires up and runs. It's running, so it's right. It sounds like I got an exhaust leak or something somewhere. And I don't think the car has been run for a while. So I'm going to check, make sure the water pump's not leaking. And then I'm going to close it up and put the serpentine belt and the timing belt cover stuff on. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the serpentine belt bracket and tensioner back on with those 2 bolts and tighten those down to about 25 foot-pounds. Okay, I got the serpentine belt tensioner in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the belt. Putting these serpentine belts on, I normally start around the crank, come up around the tensioner, go around the power steering pump, also encompass the alternator, then you go around the idler, then you go around the air conditioner compressor, which goes back under the crank. So once you got it in place, you should be able to spin the belt around to make sure it stays on track, and it is on track. And then you go ahead and put the plug in there, remove the tension from the pin, pull the pin out, and let the tension back on the belt. Okay, now that I've verified that my water pump area is still bone dry, I'm going to go ahead and install the timing belt cover, crank the car up, make sure I don't have any alternator lights, and then put the belly pan. That timing belt cover bolt shanks out, so go ahead and tighten it down, but don't over tighten it, and no need to try to break the cover. Come down here, verify that I don't have any coolant leaks, and I'm going to go ahead and put the belly pan on. I got 2 12mm bolts to put it on. The front end of it hooks into the bottom of the radiator. Alright, the next thing you need to do is to take care of your sticker. You want to put the mileage on there and the date that the belt and components were replaced. Now, I've also found it helpful to put what you replaced on the sticker. So I'll write things like the belt and the water pump, or the idler, things like that. So when you look at this sticker, you know what all was replaced brand new at the time. And then put this sticker where it'll be seen. Some people put it under the motor on the timing belt cover. Some people put it on top of the ECU box. Lately I've been putting it inside the glove box door. But wherever you put it, you want to make sure it sticks. So clean off the area real good behind it and go ahead and stick the sticker on there. I'm probably going to put it in the glove box door. So that's how I mark my sticker. I replaced the belt, the water pump, the idler, and the tensioner roller. Those were the new parts. If I put any old parts on there or used parts on there, I don't list them. So by glancing at that sticker, they can see what's been replaced already. Okay, I got my splash pan on, so that's it. I'll go ahead and close the hood down, take it for a test drive, and if you got any questions, go ahead and post them. If you feel that this information was beneficial, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you can get notification of future videos that I post. Visit my channel. I have all types of do-it-yourself videos there. You can leave questions here and I'll try to respond to them as quick as possible. You can also visit my website at robertspinner.com. Thanks again for watching.